listening to the Savoir Faire Audio Experience.
Are you ready?
The Savoir Faire Experience is your guide to everything that has to do with lifestyle. From dating, rides, style, and entertainment. All brought to you by the editor of Savoir Faire magazine, Robert White. Anything goes on this audio experience. So, let's go.
It's still the best.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Savoir Faire Audio Experience. I appreciate you guys sharing, following, and doing all the fun stuff that you do. We really appreciate that. We want to continue to bring you really great interviews with really great people, and today's really no exception. I'm really excited to talk to Christine Miles. Hello, Christine.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you finding some time in your hectic life to come talk with us. I was looking at your website today and learning a lot about you before we got to conversate today. And obviously we're going to talk about your new book, but it looks like you've been doing some guest speaking and really kind of enriching people's lives on possibly just slowing down and being able to listen better. And I'm really interested in learning a lot about the things that you teach other people. So I want to give you the floor, but I'm really curious about your background, I guess. And so maybe you can just give us a little bit of where did all this stuff start for you before you became the person that you are today?
Yeah, I always appreciate that question because we all have a story. I joked when I wrote my book, Oprah said it, so it must be true. That's when I remember hearing that in my 30s. Yeah, so I'm from Hershey, Pennsylvania. I live in the Philadelphia area now. Pretty idyllic childhood by most accounts. I played a lot of sports, a lot of outside play. It was the 70s, so perfect world in so many ways. But, below the surface, and what wasn't always seen was that I also had a mother who suffered from mental illness, including depression and anxiety, really stemming from the loss of her mother at a very, very early age. My grandmother died from childbirth. She had a rheumatic fever as a child, so she had a already weak heart, and the doctor said don't have children. She just didn't want to hear that and didn't listen, ironically, to that advice, and it cost her life. And it really cost my mother because she was motherless her whole life, and I think she also felt a lot of burden of knowing she was the reason for her mother's death. So what I did as a kid was really, and I'm in the field of psychology, so we don't go into that field unless it's to fix what was broken for us when we were younger. And so the difficulty was that my job in the family, my role as the only girl, was really to understand the pain my mother had that most people didn't see. The gift was I learned this incredible skill to hear what wasn't said, to understand the story below the surface at a really young age. I can remember as early as 5 as having an experience of listening in a different way. And so, so that really set me up for how I am in the world and have been in the world. And it's really been the reason I've been successful at anything, is because the common thread is that this skill is either turbocharged some very average abilities or some that maybe are slightly above average made exceptional. So that's why I do what I do. And so to give other people the ability to really have this be their superpower and have it be something that turbocharges their success personally and professionally.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I thank you for sharing the information about your mom and your grandmother and kind of how that process started and basically kind of shaped you. Based on your mom's kind of situation, is that one of the reasons why you got into psychology and kind of dove into learning a little bit more about that as an interest?
For sure. I mean, I was 8 the first time I remember somebody asking me, what do you want to be? And I said psychologist, when you grow up. Right away, my mother was warm and exuberant and funny, and honestly, she really lit up the room. People were drawn to her. She just had that quality about her. But the incongruency was that people didn't see the pain below the surface, and so I grew up in a family that talked a lot about the psychological things that were occurring. It wasn't an elephant in the room. We talked about. We had emotional language and so forth. So that also sparked my interest. My father was a businessman, a self-made businessman, And he also talked a lot about the psychological perspective of people and understanding people. So I was meant for this all the way around. That's for sure.
I see. Yeah, that's really unique. And I think that a lot of my childhood stuff is one of the big reasons why I became who I am as well. And I kind of account a lot of my abilities to be an entrepreneur or a business person or whatever from things that had happened in my childhood. And, you know, like having thicker skin and things like that from being bullied. There was just a lot of things that were kind of a part of my world that made me who I am today. And I kind of embraced them. And it's cool to hear that you're kind of embracing that lifestyle stuff too. And kind of knowing where you came from and the direction you were going. It's also interesting to hear you say that at 8 years old, you wanted to be a psychologist, and that there was so much interest at a young age. So why do you think that was? Was it just mom, or was there other things that were kind of implementing you?
Well, so two things. I'll answer that, and then I want to go back to something you said. I think that's what I thought meant, you know, it was to help people. And I certainly saw my mom went to therapy, my dad went to therapy, you know, I've certainly gone to therapy, and I saw that as a very positive force in the world. So that's how I languaged it back then, because it was such a positive thing that we got help. And again, you know, the joke is, and anybody in the field will tell you, that you do not go into the field unless it's to fix the dysfunction that you come from. So there's definitely a dysfunctional element to having to take care of my mother in this way emotionally as a young person. That's like, again, that was the burden of it, but it also born this incredible gift. So I don't think things could happen out of struggle sometimes, and it's what you make of it. And, you know, as much as I'm about listening and listening to others, it's also about listening to yourself, which is what I'll go back to and what you said. And I'd love to know your backstory more as well, because I think we all were shaped in those early years, and it does inform why we do what we do. Like I always say, if I had one word to describe it, it's the word's understanding, because everything I do in my life, that's the thread I want to understand. I want to help people understand. I want to understand them. I may want them to understand me. And so one of the things that I talk about in my book, and when we work with businesses, and even with, as we're merging into working with high school students, is understanding your own purpose in the world and listening to that too. And most people just don't know how to unpack it or get to it like you just described you did. So I think that's part of the listening process is, how do I know what motivates me? How do I know what I believe in and what I have passion and purpose around? And when we have language for that, it just makes us even more aware and then more successful at whatever we do.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. And to unpack some of my stuff a little bit while we're discussing these things, basically what happened was I sat down very similar to you and wanted to write a book. And when I started writing the book and going through what I wanted to write about, I was like, well, I don't want to do like a rags to riches story that's been done a million times, you know, the pursuit of happiness or something like that.
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of write something that was completely different. And so I analyzed my own life and decided, okay, these are things that probably most people wouldn't see that they've gone through in life that are positive or negative, whatever those situations were. And the lesson that I learned from each of those things was this or this or this. And there was a list of all these things that I kind of put together. And then from writing the business book, I decided like, okay, well, there's got to be a correlation here between, you know, having thick skin and being able to stand up to someone for what you believe in. So there's like a coalition thing that kind of happened when I was writing. And so it became a very therapeutic kind of process. And I'm still in that process of really writing the book and putting some stories together. But I found it to be like a very kind of relieving process to be able to write that stuff and have a business book that also is kind of a tell-all book in a little bit of a way. I'm writing the book and kind of putting that out there for legacy reasons. I want my children to be able to know things about me that not everybody knows. But I figured if I put it in book form, then they could get it later on and when it's all finalized and it's something that's permanent and that kind of idea. So, which leads me to my next question for you is obviously you were able to sit down and write your book. So I want to dive into a little bit about what the book is about.
Sure.
So it's called What Is It Costing You Not to Listen? And I really like this because I often talk to people about listening skills with some of the things that I do. So as someone that kind of built a career around listening, I guess, tell me a little bit about the book and why you actually sat down to write it.
Yeah, so I say I've been selling air for most of my most of my career. So it's
Well,
listening
everyone
is the
needs air and
oxygen.
water. So if you can sell those two things,
Well,
your business.
right. Except we take them for granted, don't we?
We do.
So that's so. Thanks for help with making my point there, and congratulations, by the way, on writing your own book, because I think that's phenomenal and a tremendous gift, and it is really therapeutic, isn't it? So again, I think it's part of the self-awareness process, which I'm a big believer, and I write about this in my book. As far as listening, it's not just about listening to others; it's also really about listening to yourself. So, I've been doing this work for a long time. Part of why I decided to write the book, I actually wrote it on the heels of COVID, because I really felt the world was ready to start listening about listening. I knew that I had my own experience in my early 30s where I had suffered a pretty serious injury from a car accident that took me out of my normal existence. I was a pretty high level athlete at the time, and I went from the highest level I could play to not being able to pull up my shorts. I was in so much pain, and so I knew what it felt like to be in a shutdown, because I had experienced that again when I was 31. And I knew the world was going to be like, what's going on here? And things were going to start to shift because they had to, because remote work and the consequences of the lockdown for kids, for adults, emotionally. So my instincts, I think, were right in that, we knew we were going to make some shifts, and people are now really more attuned to these what we call softer skills that are so important to drive results, both again personally and professionally. So I was on a mission. I went kind of nuts in terms of my pacing, and I went away and for about 8 days and wrote 16 of the 21 chapters, and finished the book when I came back within the week. So I wrote it in May of 21 and launched it in October. So I was really determined to get this message out to the world pretty quickly.
Yeah, I love the concept of this and being able to kind of put it into writing and allow people to kind of take their own pace to learn the things and the knowledge you have in this book. Talk to me a little bit about some of the stuff you talk about as a speaker, and obviously what's in the book too. What are some kind of the basics of learning to listen better so you're not missing out on things that are very important in a conversation?
Yeah, so there's so many myths about listening that we have been told and assumed almost, because most of us have not been taught how to listen. Even I have not formally been taught, which is interesting. I mean, I have a master's in psychology from a pretty prestigious school, and I'm a certified family therapist from a pretty prestigious organization, and I don't have any formal listening training. So only 2% of people have formal listening training. So that's the first problem. So what does that set up? It sets up so many myths about what is good listening, what does it look like, what should it be. It's also why people tend to overestimate their listening abilities. I talk about this in the book. 96% of people believe they're good listeners, according to Harvard Business Review. Every time I chuckle. I'm not good at math, but that's not even probable, is it? That 96% of us could be good at it. But it's because we don't have a clear metric of what good looks like. And when I mention listening, most people jump to the conclusion that active listening is what we should be doing. But even that's grossly misunderstood and pretty hard to enact if you really break it down. There's 11 to 12 behaviors that you're supposed to do to actively listen. It was designed in the late 50s by an American psychologist. It's brilliant, but it wasn't designed to be just the everyday folk that could do this without higher level training. So we've watered it down to just making eye contact and paying attention, and showing people that we're giving them attention rather than doing the work to really help people feel understood. So that's the first myth is we got to get past just showing up and like engaging. That's step one, but that's really not enough. So I'll stop there.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense to me too. And I think it has to do with obviously like being engaged, like heavily focused on what the other person's saying. It's part of the basic communication, I think, to be able to like listen and respond correctly. Something that I actively do, obviously, with my podcast when I'm interviewing people.
Yeah.
It's just an important piece of it. So I feel like I have, I've kind of mastered some of the listening aspects to be able to direct a conversation in the right direction and kind of hold an audience in that regard and make sure there's always conversation kind of happening.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously I'm working on my book, and you said that yours kind of like naturally kind of just came out to you. What kind of feedback would you give to other people that, are writing a book? I mean, I know this is kind of you're not a first time author, but like at the same time, there's probably a lot of knowledge there, just kind of absorbing information, trying to figure out what does belong, what doesn't belong. What kind of advice would you give to someone that's writing one?
Well, somebody said to me, I'll preface it with this, because somebody said, "Hey, oh, you're a writer." I said, "No, I've written a book." There's a difference.
Same.
Let me be clear. So that's that. So one piece of advice is get a really good editor, because we're not, most of us aren't, even if we're English majors, we're not designed to edit a book to the point where it's reader friendly. So that's a key to success. And when you write for the creative word rather than for how it's supposed to sound to the reader, it really makes the process a lot simpler. And I had a really good book coach. His name is Patrick Snow, who's helped a lot of people write books very effectively. And it's because of him. And I was determined, and you're right, it kind of poured out of me. This was in my head for a while. But I also had a really good structure that he helped me with. So that's the other thing. Don't try to do it alone. If you write it every morning, or you write it like I did on a retreat, that's really a personality style thing, whatever works. I just don't have the patience or the bandwidth to do that day to day. So which is part of why I decided to do it that way. So the first thing is it's okay to get help and in the process, because somebody that's figured out the process can make it easier for you. And then the second thing I would say, because a lot of people ask me about writing a book, is know why you're writing it. If you're writing it to become a bestseller and for everybody in the world to know it, that's a great thing to think about, but it's not necessarily the goal that's going to get you where you want. So if it's to leave a legacy, if it's to drive your business, if it's just because I want to put this in the world, whatever that goal is, know what it is before you start, because it'll help you stay focused on the finish line.
I like that. And I like that kind of that perspective too, because that's something that I do quite often. I think a lot of people get very overwhelmed by goals in general. And what I've learned is that if you just write it down and then you kind of like break it down, make everything a little bit smaller, easier to manage, then potentially you can get to the goal, right? And so it makes sense to like, and if you're going to be an author, you want to write a book, it makes sense to find the time. I think that's the simplest piece, to just find the time to be able to write, put pen to paper, type on the keyboard, whatever you're doing, and try to get to the end line. But I like also your advice about finding a really great editor and someone that can kind of take your story, not only edit the story, but also convert it into something that you truly want it to be. I think that's really great advice too. I mean, I think I wrote my book, or I'm writing my book for a kind of thing for my kids, I thought, where it was going to be very personal and private, but I was putting business information in there. And that's when I started kind of leaning towards, well, there's going to be other people that are going to be open to this. And so now I feel like it's not going to be just a simple tell-all book or, something about my life, but more about the things that, the business lessons and things that people can analyze a little bit. So like really kind of diving into yourself to figure out if you have these specific skills that would allow you to be, an entrepreneur, business owner, these type of things that I kind of feel like you can learn, but a lot of this stuff really comes naturally to some people. And that's the stuff that I kind of analyze and break down, which is very cool. So I'm curious about like 2025 for you. Your life looks very interesting to me from the outside looking in. You have the new book. You're doing some speaking.
Tell me more.
You're on podcasts. I mean, you're doing a lot of great things, a lot of things that I admire. So what kind of things are on your schedule for 2025 as far as any other books, a tour for the book? Are you doing some speaking opportunities? Where can people kind of come find you and see you?
Yeah, well, I really appreciate that. So my mission is to bring listening education to all ages. And the hardest thing in my business, because I've largely, my company's mostly worked with other companies whether that's an SAP or a smaller local company, that we go out and help salespeople, we go out and leadership and teams, customer service, IT teams to listen so they can understand to drive those results. I made an addition about a year ago where I developed a program that's licensable to elementary schools and classrooms, so that the skill can be started to be learned at 5 or 6 rather than waiting till 35 or 36. I always say, do you want to ski when you're, get on the mountain at 5 or 35? It's a lot easier when you're fearless. So we've launched that program into this semester in the elementary schools. We're in about over 20 classrooms throughout the country, the United States, Canada, and we have a school in Ireland that actually used the elementary school to teach 250 high school boys. So they loved it. And so we're just now, we've launched that and the classrooms are getting up and running. And so my mission is to scale that so that listening education starts, like I said, at a very early age. So that's big in 25. And then I just went away one of my other writing retreats so that I could write the high school program. The inspiration came from that Ireland teacher who's on my board, where this is called Mastering the Listening Path, so that we'll have the similar thing, a licensable program for high school students that can be rolled out in classes. And it's an animated program. I animated myself so I can do the teaching, so that's a light lift for the teachers. They implement the lessons and I do the teaching of the listening path itself. And when, this is a little more robust, Mastering the Listening Path gets into some more complicated technical aspects of listening and communication. How do you switch from being the listener to being the teller, something you just described as a host? How do you guide the conversation at a whole different level? And then we're launching the children's book's been written. I have an illustrator working on it, so that's coming out this summer. So 3 to 103 is my 2025 mission.
I love that. It's extremely cool that you're kind of diving into that younger demographic and kind of bringing some of your knowledge and ability to them, because I feel like that's a generation that really, really needs a lot of guidance. and I see that in my own personal life too. I feel it's unfortunate because I get in these weird situations where like I do kind of like speak publicly. I'm not saying like you do on a stage, but like when I'm at the gym or when I'm out and I see some kind of situation, I'm kind of the voice of reason in most situations. Like, and so I've seen young people kind of lean on me a little bit, like high schoolers at the gym or something like that, where they know me from being in a small town. Hey, you're that guy that owns that business or whatever. And I do some things that are kind of cool to the public. So I think they kind of lean a little bit, and I get a lot of, I get approached quite often about some of the stuff that I do. So I feel like that's nice. Take that advantage of like, thank you for the compliment. Thank you for telling me that my business is great. That's really cool. But is there something else that we can kind of dive into? And now that I'm kind of going this other rabbit hole, I'm kind of becoming a guide for some really interesting people, young people too. So I like that you're going that direction, because adults maybe some adults are just kind of a lost cause at a certain level. Like they're not going to listen no matter how much you try, but kids still have the ability to learn.
Well, we all feel, so it's funny because, I titled my book, The Problem, What Is It Costing You Not to Listen?
Yeah.
And when my friends would say, will you dedicate the book to me? I said, do you understand what the title is? Are you sure you want me to do that? Our adults are lost cause. They can be if they're not willing to change, so that's for sure. And that it has been something that, and most of us, we sell to people who believe what we believe. We know this from Simon Sinek and leading with the why. So not all leaders and business leaders believe that this is a fundamentally imperative skill, but we know it is. The data is there, the research is there. My love of children and again, as a child that learned and was successful because of the skill, I really wanted to do this for a long time. I didn't know how, and I have the right team now so that we create the whole curriculum, including these videos. But the real hero in this story are the teachers, because without them, we can't scale. And so what we've made sure of is that we're there to make this as simple and easy for them to implement as possible. And what I'm so thrilled about is that the teachers are sharing that feedback, that it's 10 minutes of prep. It's a 20 to 30-minute lesson. This is built for the mainstream classroom, but a guidance counselor can use it. a special needs teacher can also use it. So we're surrounding it, but they literally, we send them a package that has all the listening path tools. They get this in their classroom, and then it's 10 minutes of prep for them the first time they teach it. So
Wow.
life has to be, yeah. So my mission is for them to help us scale this larger mission by changing the world one listener at a time. And without them, we can't do it. So I'm grateful to the teachers that have already implemented the program. One of our teachers sent us a video last week of the children. We have an original song that opens up each video, and the kids were singing and dancing to the lyrics while they were getting ready as a class. Yeah, it was very moving. So that's what warms my heart, is that this is how, we become good citizens in the world. It's what you just described at the gym, is being a good citizen, and we need to develop the skill, because as Jonathan Haidt has talked about, and I mentioned him because he wrote the book, The Anxious Generation, which is imperative for parents and educators to understand, is that we have set them up based on screen time and lack of outdoor play and so many things that we have created a mental health crisis, and we've also created a communication crisis. And we need an antidote to fix this. And I believe that listening and communication is that antidote. And if we don't put it in schools, then our young people are going to fail as they get older.
Yep, I totally agree. And it's so unique to see kind of the mission of something that most people probably take for granted, just being a huge structure of so many things that people probably didn't realize. Just like simple listening skills are literally a part of your entire world, your relationship, your children, your job, almost everything, to really kind of grasp what's kind of happening. I think that I've always incorporated really good listening skills in my world, just because I think people are so unique, and I want to learn every little thing I can about them, and paying attention to what kind of lessons I'm hearing, and the quotes I'm hearing, and the stuff that I'm hearing only makes me more intelligent, I think, and stronger.
Absolutely.
I'm learning I'm learning so many different things from so many different people in my position. And so, yeah, it kind of absorbs so much, and it's really kind of unique. So I want to give you the little artificial shout out here and let people know where they can find your stuff. So ChristineMilesListens.com is your main website where they can go and get more information directly about you. And then the listeningpath.com is the mission that we were just talking about, where you're kind of going into the schools and doing some more stuff. And then I found, obviously, the book, What Is It Costing You Not to Listen, on Amazon. Do you have it on some other major platforms as well where people can get a copy?
Yeah, they can go to Barnes & Noble. They can go to any major platform and find it. Amazon's usually the easiest for people, but they'll find it other places as well.
Yeah, very cool. And it's easy to Google, too. Just Google the title and Google Christine Miles, and lots of information pops up, because you've had a really great career kind of letting people know how to listen. And I think that's so unique. Such a simple concept that really kind of worked for you. And obviously being very educated about psychology probably is a big piece of being able to educate people about this.
Yeah, it's definitely, I learned very much later in my life that I am dyslexic. So I always I struggled academically in high school, and it really wasn't until I got in college that I figured it out. But, I did okay. I don't want to sound like I failed, but it wasn't easy for me. I never could not study. And math and science weren't my strong suits, but I do paint pictures in my mind, which a lot of dyslexics do. And I think for me, that's, as an athlete too, I always learn the technical things to make it simple so that I can enact it. So I think one of my part of listening is knowing how to make things simple for people, because hard things are hard to do, but we can make them a lot simpler. So that's part of what, again, for the teachers, for anybody that's learning this. And I've had people, and you're going to have this happen too, I've had people read my book and reach out and thank me because they had a game-changing conversation, because the tools are in the book. So it's a how-to book as well as stories that support the how-to. So, if one conversation, one relationship changes, that's a gift. So if that's what the book's there for as well.
Yeah, very cool. Well, thank you so much, Christine, for your time today and being able to kind of enrich my audience and myself a little bit. I really appreciate connecting and having a chance to talk with you.
Likewise, and thank you for your belief in listening. And I would agree with you. By the way, you said something really important. We didn't touch on this, but you said I guide the conversation. You didn't use the word guide, but you lead it. And by the way, that's another myth. Too often we let the speaker be in charge. A good listener is the one guiding the speaker, not the other way around. So I appreciate you.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and I appreciate that advice too. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Hopefully it stays sunny in our neighborhood because I think we're sharing the same weather today. So
yes,
I think spring is finally sprung.
Spring is sprung. I'm happy.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the show. Please take a minute to head over to www.savfair.com and subscribe to our publication.